August 7th, 1978, Pradyumna Prabhu's letter to Satsvarup regarding the new gurus. Pradyumna Prabhu was a senior disciple of Srila Prabhupada, who Srila Prabhupada most often lovingly referred to as Panditji. He had become proficient in Sanskrit, and he traveled with Srila Prabhupada. He was very much liked by Srila Prabhupada and by his godbrothers who had the pleasure to know him. Srila Prabhupada had instructed that if he should leave this world before he completed the translating the Srimad Bhagavatam, he had authorized Pradyumna Prabhu to complete his work. Knowing how dear the translation work of the translation of the Srimad Bhagavatam work was to Srila Prabhupada, this was a most glorious honor that Srila Prabhupada had given to Panditji Pradyumna. And it shows just how dear Pradyumna was to Srila Prabhupada. As the GBC established their multi-guru system, the new gurus began to accept worship on the level that had previously only been given to Srila Prabhupada. Pradyumna Prabhu saw this was wrong. Out of concern, he wrote Satsvarup a respectful letter wherein he expressed his disagreement with the path the GBC had taken regarding the gurus. He pointed out that these men didn't even have the qualifications or spiritual advancement to match the high degree of respect and worship that they were being given. He warned, if this is not corrected, that eventually these men will fall down, and it will create major problems for ISKCON. Here are excerpts from his letter, and I quote, "The matter concerns the godbrothers who were selected by Srila Prabhupada to accept disciples. At the time of Srila Prabhupada's disappearance, it was most clearly understood by all of us present that Srila Prabhupada made no successor. Everyone admitted that fact and understood it clearly. Instead, the GBC was to jointly manage all affairs of ISKCON, just had been the case previously. This was the same solution as desired by Om Vishnupad Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who also had not made any successor, although his wishes were not followed. In addition to the GBC management, Srila Prabhupada also selected 11 somewhat advanced disciples to grant initiation to newcomers. However, it was never mentioned at any time by His Divine Grace that these men were to be known as acharyas. He simply instructed that they may now accept disciples. Otherwise, as it was understood and practiced at the time, there was no special position given to these 11, either in the society as a whole or in relation to their godbrothers. Management would depend on the joint GBC, and among godbrothers and godsisters, all are on the same level, with the exception of some special regard and respect shown to honor older senior disciples by the godbrothers and godsisters who are junior." End of quote. Pradyumna says that everyone understood it at the time, after Prabhupada's disappearance, that everyone, meaning those around Srila Prabhupada, the GBC members, they all understood at the time, according to him, that Srila Prabhupada had not appointed anyone as his successor. He had only appointed 11 Ritviks, actually. Pradyumna says that Srila Prabhupada said they were to initiate their own disciples or initiate disciples. But as we've shown, the source of that idea came from the erroneous, mistaken, and misleading GBC report of the May 28th meetings. Pradyumna didn't attend the May 28th meeting. And so, like the other GBC members, that erroneous report was the only basis for that idea. For that reason, I disagree with that assessment made by Pradyumna that they were to initiate their own disciples, but he points out that the GBC had understood that there was to be no special position given to those 11, either in the society as a whole or in relation to their own godbrothers. That is an interesting insight. However, another aspect that I disagree with in his use of the word acharya, he uses it as being something different or higher than that of a guru who gives initiation. Prabhupada had used the word guru and acharya one and the same. Later in the letter, Pradyumna wrote, "Maharaj, after very much consideration and consultation, and also confirmation by older members of our sampradaya, I am writing to you to see if you can rectify the present situation. Many of us here, older God brothers, are very concerned in two ways. One, that the 11 gurus, having not been appointed to the position of Acharya, and for which they are unqualified both by A, insufficient knowledge of the Shastra, and B, the incomplete realization of Krishna consciousness, are accepting worship on that level. And this may lead to anomalies in the society and personally because of lack of complete detachment and Atmajan to a buildup of pride and subsequent fall down. And two, that the United Society ISKCON, because of illegal division and control by a few members instead of by the joint GBC, will become broken up in separate societies and the unified preaching effort very much hindered. Hoping for your immediate attention and kind reply. Pradyumna, and then signed by Pradyumna. Pradyumna, that was the end of the letter. So Pradyumna Prabhu was not at all disrespectful. He was a very sincere devotee, intelligent. He was more intellectual than the GBC members. Srila Prabhupada didn't lovingly call him Panditji for no reason. He was humbly hoping for a kind reply. The kind reply given to him by Satsvarup and the rest of the GBC was offensive and apprehensible. They expelled Pradyumna Prabhu from Srila Prabhupada's ISKCON mission. The GBC considered his letter a threat to them, to their multi-guru system. They took his good advice as being nothing but an outright offense. After all, they had been appointed by Srila Prabhupada to be gurus. Poor Pradyumna was not. To be guru, you must be on the highest Mahabhagavat platform. And yet Pradyumna said that they were unqualified by both their insufficient knowledge of Shastra and their incomplete realization of Krishna consciousness. These new gurus considered themselves above reproach. How dare Pradyumna insult them in this way? How dare he call them, the gurus who Prabhupada had ordained as gurus, how dare he call them unqualified? You know, Pradyumna had humbly requested for their kind reply, and they responded by kindly kicking him out of his spiritual master's mission. No way were these gurus going to tolerate such insubordination, such offensive, demeaning attacks against them. Yet Srila Prabhupada loved Pradyumna very much. He had bestowed upon him the highly respected service of completing the translation work, his translation work of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada had said that of all his godbrothers, only Srila Sridhar Maharaj was qualified to translate Srimad Bhagavatam. And here, of all his disciples, Srila Prabhupada had only authorized Pradyumna to complete this most elevated service on his behalf. Later, after Pradyumna was kicked out, the GBC authorized, one of the new acharyas, Hridayananda, to complete the work of the translation of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Many of Srila Prabhupada's disciples, myself included, have never been happy with this. We don't accept Hridayananda's translations as being authorized or being pleasing to Srila Prabhupada. We find them to be tainted with the cruel way the GBC wrongly mistreated the one and only person he had authorized to do that service. I take this view not out of disrespect to Hridayananda, but out of respect for Pradyumna. This incident underscores just how fanatical, tyrannical, and abusive the gurus in GBC immediately became regarding this issue just after Srila Prabhupada's departure. Years later, after so many of these new acharyas fell down, finally, in 1999, 21 years later, after he wrote the letter, the GBC wrote a letter of apology to Pradyumna, asking for his forgiveness for having expelled him wrongly. But they didn't mention this glorious service that they had taken away from him, or offer that he could also take that service back up again and create another authorized completion of the Srimad Bhagavatam translations. Another point about this is how this incident poured cold water on a lot of devotees who wanted to speak up and speak out about how the new guru, multi-guru path was totally wrong. But to do so would mean getting thrown out of Srila Prabhupada's mission. It would mean having your services taken away. It would mean losing the association of the Vaishnavas and being part of Prabhupada's mission. ISKCON's dark age had descended.